Welcome. I'm Lars Sage, Gallery Manager of the Art Center of Estes Park here in Estes Park, Colorado. And I want to introduce our two featured artists for our newest show, Jewel Tones and Gemstones, Diana Wade and Alice League. And we're going to learn a little more about what they are doing as artists. And let me start off with Diana. And I see that you didn't start painting until after you retired from the medical profession and moved to Colorado. So when did you start painting abstracts?
I started painting abstracts about 11 years ago, Lars. And I started, before that, I was doing very representational work. Lots of very detailed pictures of pictures. I was looking a lot at my husband's beautiful photography for inspiration and really copying a lot of what I was seeing that his camera had picked up. And in 2011, I really started branching away from that and trying to tell my own story. It's always been said, I know, that if you want a photograph of something, you should go out and take one yourself, or you could go out and buy one. And in order to create a painting, you needed to think about it in the much more emotional terms. And to me, abstracts are just about as emotional as you can get with painting. That's my own personal opinion.
So what's a good definition of an abstract painting then?
I think it's really simplifying something, just absolutely paring it down to the bone. You're subtracting detail instead of adding detail. I used to, sometimes even now, I'll start and I'll feel passionate about a certain kind of an object that I want to then moved by. And I might sketch it briefly on my substrate before I begin to abstract it. And I'm really pulling detail away from it and getting down to emotion, what I want to say about it, not what it looks like. Everybody knows that a bottle is a bottle. I'm not going to show you yet another pretty bottle. I'm going to show you how I feel about that bottle.
Oh, thank you. Alice, you know, as a jewelry artist, you say you're skilled in wire wrapping. Just what does that mean?
Well, I take a cut and polished or unpolished stone and design a one-of-a-kind setting using 1420 gold-filled wire or sterling silver. Wire is pliable, and there are endless possibilities to frame the stone. I start with 4 to 5 lengths of square wire, and I mold it around the stone using half-round wire to hold it in place. I then use the points of the half round to bend so that I can keep the stone in the case. And I do that on the back side and on the front side. And I always try to make my back side look as nice as my front side. Then I bring it up to the top and make a bail so that you can wear it either with an omega or a chain. The most time is usually spent on the front side of the stone, and I try to design it based on the markings of the stone and not to overpower the stone, because I'm really selling the stone.
And you say that that's framed in, so it's no glue, it's just all wire holding that stone in.
Right, and I work really hard to make sure that it doesn't move out of that case so that one doesn't lose the precious stone.
Well, I see you're wearing one of your creations. Can you describe the process that you use to make that pennant?
Well, it's a little more, I use the square wire, as I said. Sometimes I twist the wire so that it sparkles a little bit more depending on the stone, or I may keep it straight, so it's more plain, so it can be worn with a variety of clothing.
Well, in addition to pendants, what other jewelry pieces do you make?
I usually try to make earrings to go with the pendant. I always sell them separately because some people just like to wear gold or silver with them. But if I have the beads that match or something that will complement it, then I make the earrings to match. I also make bead bracelets or wire bracelets. I don't have any in the show at the moment, but I have been known to make lots of pretty wire bracelets. I also have made bolos for men. And I guess that's pretty much what I try to stick with.
Thank you. Diana, can you tell us a little bit about your process in creating an abstract painting, how that developed?
Sure. One thing I'll say to start with is that I think it's harder work to create an abstract than it is to do something that's representational. I think you're having, in my case anyway, you're having to dig deeper inside yourself in order to create that abstract. You do need a decent framework to start with, though, and I'm real partial to the golden mean and also just simply to some of the other more traditional types of design that one might use in an abstract, but I vary from that from time to time as well. If there's a rule that's written, it's always fun to try to break that rule in a successful way. So if you have a decent framework to start with, then that gives you the freedom to jump off the ledge, so to speak. I was inspired, I think, especially by a workshop I took in 2 years after I started doing abstracts. I got away from my family, from the art center, from everything, and went all by myself with no friends to a 3-day master class with Skip Lawrence. And Google Skip Lawrence if you've not been familiar with him. He's a fabulous, nationally known abstract artist. And that whole workshop just gave me the freedom to jump off the ledge after that, I'll have to say. His whole concept of layering and layering and layering in order to find simplification was absolutely critical to the way that I work today. And I do abstracts in all the different mediums that I work in. Watercolor happened to be what Skip was doing the workshop in, but pastels were the last territory to conquer. And this show, Jewel Tones and Gemstones, all of my new work for this show is done in pastel. And the thing that's allowed me to be able to do successful abstracts in pastel is the ability to layer on the pastel substrate because of a spray fixative that I'm able to use. And it's not an aerosol that we're traditionally used to using in pastels. It's a pump spray, like Lysol in the COVID era. And you can use it in your studio. You don't have to be outside. You don't have to have any kind of special ventilation in the room. And you can just spray it infinitely between layers of that pastel. I'll use it every 10 minutes or so. And you continue to get more and more and more tooth. It's something that Degas created. Initially, it's his formula. And instead of being made with alcohol, which would allow an aerosol to spray, it's made with casein, which is essentially milk. So I sort of have cows to thank for this new ability of mine to create endless layers of pastels in my abstracts. So Skip Lawrence and Degas are my two big influences.
Well, where and how do you get your inspiration for a new painting?
Oh, it can be from all sorts of things. It can be from the object itself. that I'm, for some reason, just mesmerized with. Friends of mine will remember that painting bottles, I was heavily into bottles for a number of years. And that was another thing that came from Skip's workshop. He wanted us to take one thing that we wanted to portray in lots and lots of different ways, because the point is not just to show us a pretty bottle, we all know what that looks like. We want to find out what it is that you want to say about that bottle or about that object. So, so it can be from an object, sometimes it'll be a palette. I'm just obsessed with wanting to do purples and pinks, you know, primarily today. Or other times it could be a magazine, a piece of paper that I've ripped out of a magazine, even just half of a photograph, for example, just because I like the color or the placement. So there's all sorts of things. In some cases, it's the title that comes first. For example, I think you're seeing right now one of the paintings in the show. It's called Mr. Bojangles, and that's a well, it's not just a Bob Dylan song, but Bob Dylan covered it, and I'm a huge Bob Dylan freak. And I wanted to do Mr. Bojangles for some reason, and that's where that painting came from. Many, many layers later. Believe me, when they start, they don't look like they do when they're finished.
Well, have you had success in selling abstract art?
You know, I have. I've been real fortunate. You don't think of the Art Center of Estes Park as being the mecca of abstract art in the Western Hemisphere. But I have had some success selling here in the gallery. Often it's to somebody from the Midwest who happens to be passing through, or Texas. And of course I've sold to family and friends, you know, we all kind of start there. But I'm hoping that this show in particular might introduce some of the Estes Park folks to abstracts in a way that they haven't looked at them before, and maybe I'll have a few sales to locals. That'd be really neat.
Well, I've heard you had a little story about one of your early successful abstract paintings. Can you share that with us?
Oh, I did. It was one of the first ones that I ever did, and I entered it into the State Watercolor Society show, and I was absolutely thrilled to get in, because that's a real tough show to be juried into. So that enough was, you know, that was a thrill for me. And oddly enough, it sold right away. And when they sell, if you're familiar with what happens in galleries, is a red dot gets put on the little label that's next to your painting. That means it's already sold. So a friend of mine and I went to the show one day, and we were wandering around, and I decided we'd cut back, and there were some people that looked like they were viewing my painting at that time, and I thought, oh, this will be a great chance to listen in and get all sorts of accolades and pats on the back. Well, there were 4 people, and I'm going to say an older couple, and coming from me, that's really something with all this white hair. But this old guy and his wife were looking at my painting, and clearly he saw the red dot on the label. And after a while, he said to her, and believe me, I was waiting for this comment of his. He said, "Well, at least somebody liked it." Kind of helped put things into perspective.
Well, thank you. Alice, you know, I've noted your professional career included serving as an executive director for a variety of organizations. So what led you to wire wrap gemstones?
Well, my husband and I moved to Estes Park about 25 years ago because we thought we were going to retire here. We had just built a museum in North Dakota, Dinosaur Rock and Mineral Museum. And so I was going to shows. I was the director, he was the curator. And I saw all these beautiful stones. And so while here in the winter, we were here in the winter for the last 25 years. We would go to rock and mineral shows, and so I took a class here at the Art Center in wire wrapping. And as the manager of the gift shop in the museum, I figured this would be an excellent way for our museum visitors to take a piece of the museum home with them. So for several years, I just sold them in the museum, in the gift shop. And then I was here in the winter time and everybody said, well, you gotta bring your work here. And I said, well, it's all kind of part of the museum. And finally we were cutting back a little bit on the museum, so I ended up buying out all of the jewelry that I had purchased, calves and beads and so forth. And so then I became an artist here in 2005 and have been selling here, and I also sold in the museum. But I go to rock and mineral shows, still do, and I can't leave the calves on the table. Most of them are one of a kind, and I envision how they would look, and I always buy way more than I need. So I have boxes and boxes of calves and beads to make something, and hopefully I'll have plenty of time to just keep making them.
Well, is the Art Center the only location where you sell your work?
Now I have my work at the Village Store here in Estes on the other side of town. Gives people that only see that side of the town an opportunity to see my work. And I also have it at the Dragon Store in Paonia, Colorado. I was on vacation last year, and of course I always wear my work because it's the best advertising. And I walked into the Dragon and they said, you know, we could put your work here. So I sent them work and I have sold several pieces there.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I want to certainly invite the public to come and see our new show, which starts today at 12 and runs until August 9th. We are open Friday through Monday from 12 to 4. And please come and see our new work and our new show. And we certainly want to thank Alice and Diana for their time to share with us their views on their work. Thank you. Hope that's good enough.
That's great.